You know, we're all trying to eat healthy, right? But what if I told you the very rules we follow, counting calories, tracking macros, are totally missing the point? Today, we're going to dive into a new idea called food coherence, and it suggests that our food is constantly talking to our bodies. The real question is that conversation clear and helpful, or is it just a bunch of disruptive static?
All right, let's get right into it. This whole thing kicks off with a mystery, a really frustrating one that I'm willing to bet a lot of you have felt firsthand.
You know the drill. You're dealing with fatigue, maybe some brain fog, inflammation. You just feel off. So you go to the doctor, they run all the tests, and the results come back. Everything's normal. It's maddening. So what is actually going on here? Okay, so this slide gets to the absolute heart of the problem. Our current medical tests are great at measuring static things, what this slide calls state. Think of it like a single photograph of your blood chemistry at one moment in time. But what it completely misses is the dynamic picture, the regulation. It's like the electrical hum of your body. The test just can't see the noise, that drifting voltage that shows your system is struggling to keep itself stable and bounce back from stress.
So here's the bottom line. The issue isn't that nothing is wrong with you. It's that our standard toolkit has a massive blind spot. We're looking at a single snapshot when we should be watching the whole movie of how your body responds when it's put under a little bit of pressure. This measurement problem, well, it forces us to question absolutely everything. And that starts with our most fundamental beliefs about food. So let's just tear down the old rules and build a totally new way of looking at this.
For decades, we've been taught to see food as just chemical fuel, right? A simple list of nutrients and calories. But the new view is a complete 180. Food isn't just fuel, it's an instructional signal. It's a set of commands telling our biology what to do. So the focus shifts from a boring list of ingredients to the actual biological action those ingredients kick off. And look, this isn't just some fringe theory. A landmark study from the NIH proved it. They took two groups of people and gave them diets that were perfectly matched. Same calories, protein, carbs, fats, you name it. The only difference? One diet was all whole foods, the other was all ultra-processed. The result was absolutely stunning. The ultra-processed group just automatically started eating 500 more calories a day, and no surprise, they gained weight. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the chemical building blocks are identical, what on earth is the body actually reacting to? The answer is profound. It's not the fuel, it's the information. The industrial processing itself scrambles the biological signal. And that brings us to the solution. But it requires a whole new way of looking at our bodies, a new paradigm based less on pure chemistry and a whole lot more on the physics of our biology. So this slide lays out the new operating system for our health. On one side, you have food coherence. That's the clean, stable, organized signal sent by whole foods. And on the other, you have what's being called a bioelectric mutagen, which is just a fancy term for the chaotic, noisy, disruptive signal from ultra-processed foods that messes with our internal systems. And believe me, this isn't some abstract idea. These signals have a direct physical impact on us. A coherent signal from good food actually stabilizes our cell membranes and supports our mitochondria. But that incoherent noise from processed junk, it causes cellular disruption, it lowers the voltage in our mitochondria, and can even lead to something called a loss of tissue memory, where our tissues kind of forget their original blueprint for how to heal and regenerate. So how does this happen? Well, it works through a three-layer hardware stack in our bodies. First, you have the gatekeepers. The signals hit our cell membranes first. Second, they go right for the power plant, disrupting the voltage in our mitochondria, which is the engine room of our cells. And third, they mess with the controller, which is the body's main feedback loops, something we can actually measure with things like heart rate variability. Okay, so if whole foods are sending this beautiful, clean signal, where exactly is all this disruptive noise coming from? What is it about modern food that makes it speak a foreign language our bodies just don't understand? Well, the root of the problem is something called molecular mismatch. This is the fundamental conflict that happens when these brand new, man-made molecules, things that just never existed in nature, are introduced to our ancient biological hardware, which has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. I mean, think about things like synthetic herbicides or industrial emulsifiers in our food supply. These are molecules that were literally invented to disrupt biological systems. We're not just eating food anymore, we're eating technological artifacts. To really get why this matters so much, think of your immune system like a bouncer at a very exclusive club. It doesn't see broccoli or a cookie.
It's a pattern recognition machine. All it does is check molecular IDs at the door, constantly asking one question: are you on the list, friend or foe? So when these suspects, like emulsifiers or artificial sweeteners, show up at the door, they have molecular IDs the bouncer has never ever seen before. Now, they might not be toxic in the classic sense of being a poison, but they are foreign. They're not on the list. And as you can see here, they go straight to the gut barrier and just start causing trouble, creating this constant low-grade inflammatory noise throughout your entire system. Now, it's so easy to think this is all about our individual food choices, but the problem is so much bigger than that. We have to look beyond our own plate and go upstream. This visual illustrates the big picture perfectly. Chronic disease isn't some random accident, it's often the predictable downstream result of a system designed way upstream. We're talking about things like agricultural subsidies, industrial processing that's engineered for infinite shelf life, and complex supply chains that all create a food environment where the unhealthiest choice is almost always the easiest, the cheapest, and the most convenient one.
And this just reframes the entire conversation. The epidemic of chronic disease we're seeing, it's not some massive failure of individual willpower. It is the predictable, almost inevitable outcome of the environment we have designed.
So, if the old rules are broken and the system is kind of flawed, how do we find our way to better health? Well, it starts by asking a brand new and much more powerful question. So, what's the new path forward? It begins by shifting our entire metric for what health even is. As this graph shows, true resilience isn't found in a static number on a lab report. It's encoded in the recovery curve, how quickly and cleanly your system gets back to normal after a stressor, like a meal. That blue line, that's a coherent system. It snaps right back. But that orange line, that shows a system that's incoherent, noisy, and dangerously slow to recover. And this all comes down to one simple but incredibly powerful question you can ask yourself every single day. Look down at your plate and don't just ask, is this healthy, or how many calories are in this? Ask yourself this: is this meal building stability and coherence in my body, or is it creating stress and chaos? At the end of the day, that might be the only question that really matters.